I didn't expect to feel anything in that moment, but something stirred inside me. But the moment she placed that cup of tea outside my door without saying a word, I knew I had already lost. I'm no 19. No one ever truly listened to me in that house. Until Diana looked at me with a kind of attentiveness I hadn't felt in years. I respected the boundaries, but the emotions were harder to ignore than I expected. If you've ever felt a connection that defied timing or place, but so right it hurt, you'll understand. Have you ever felt a connection with someone where just one look was enough to shake your heart? Tell me in the comments. My name is Noah, 19 years old, a freshman studying graphic design, just home for spring break after a long semester. If there was one thing I wasn't looking forward to coming back to, it was the house. Sounds strange, right? But to me, home isn't a place to rest. It's a space filled with silence, coldness, and 1,000 unanswered questions. I've lived here since I was 12, after my mom died of cancer. My dad isn't a bad man. He's just someone who withdrew from the world the day she passed. He remarried a year later to a gentle woman named Diana. And while I've never truly seen her as a mom, I've never resented her either. Honestly, I think I'm grateful for her because she's managed to live with the coldness of my father, the same coldness I've been trying to survive every day. My dad's the kind of man who runs on routine. Wake up, coffee, work, dinner, bed. No hugs, no check-ins. By the time I was 15, I had already stopped expecting to hear, "How are you, son?" from him. As for Deanna, she's always been kind, thoughtful, but there's always been a thin line between us, a polite distance built on too much carefulness. And I don't blame her. Who would want to be the stepmom to a quiet kid who never lets anyone in? The thing is, I've gotten used to not being seen. No one knows how many nights I stay awake. No one knows I jolt out of sleep from dreams of my mom. No one knows I once nearly dropped out of school. And I never told anyone. Because what would be the point? I've been living with the half presence of a father and the distant care of a woman who doesn't know if she's allowed to touch my emotions. The first few days back home, nothing changed. My dad was at work all day, came home for dinner, then disappeared into work calls. Deanna greeted me with a gentle smile and asked if I wanted anything special to eat. I nodded, just to end the conversation. That was that. I spent most of my time in my room, lying on the bed, scrolling through my phone, listening to music, sketching random things. No one knocked to ask what I was thinking. No one told me they were glad I was home. I don't think anyone in this house really wanted me back. Whether I was here or not, maybe it didn't make a difference. Then one evening, I walked past the living room. Diana was folding laundry on the couch. When she saw me, she paused for a second, then smiled. "Did you sleep well?" I nodded, still nodding, still the same old routine, but that time, something in her eyes made me stop. She didn't say anything else, just looked at me like she was waiting for me to say something. But I couldn't. My throat tightened with a sadness I couldn't name, and I walked away before she could see my eyes turning red. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her question, "Did you sleep well?" kept echoing in my head. And for the first time in years, someone asked it, and I actually believed they wanted to hear the truth. The next day, there was a cup of tea sitting outside my door. No note, no knock, just a cup of tea, still warm. And I knew, for the first time in a very long time, someone genuinely cared. I don't know why I drank the tea that day. Maybe because it was still warm. Maybe because I wanted that feeling to last a little longer, the feeling of being remembered, even if it was through a small gesture. I brought the cup down to the kitchen. Deanna was doing the dishes, her back turned to me. When I set the cup on the counter, she turned slightly and gave a small nod. "Was it good?" she asked, her voice gentle, like she didn't want to scare me off. I just said, "Yeah," but something inside me stirred. From that day on, I started noticing her more. Not in the wrong way, but in a way I hadn't allowed myself to before. She became someone whose quiet presence made me feel human again. She was the one who woke up earlier than everyone else to make breakfast, the one who straightened the tablecloth when it slipped, the one who touched my dad's arm lightly whenever his tone got too sharp. She quietly kept things in place, not just in the house, but within herself. Even though we didn't talk much, Deanna started noticing me differently too. She'd suggest watching an old movie I once mentioned. Sometimes She'd leave a plate of warm cookies on my desk, no explanation needed. No pressure, no expectation. I began staying in the kitchen longer after dinner. Sometimes I'd pretend I needed more water just to see if she'd start a conversation. And she always did, always starting with the smallest things like, have you been sleeping okay lately? Or is that cultural history class of yours giving you a hard time this semester? I'd never been someone who opened up easily, but with Diana, I felt safe. Like she wasn't judging or trying to analyze me. She just listened and responded in exactly the amount I could handle. No more. No pushing. One time, I let it slip that I once dreamed of being a children's book illustrator. I said it like a joke, like it was just a silly passing thought. But 2 days later, there was a book on my desk, classic illustrations of the decade with a small handwritten note. Every little kid inside you deserves to be nurtured. I didn't say anything. I just stood outside her room that evening, hand on the doorknob, then let go. But inside me, something had started to shift. We still kept our distance, but it was a chosen distance, not one of neglect, a quiet kind of connection, like two people sitting at opposite ends of a broken bridge, neither stepping across, but both silently waiting for the wind to soften enough to begin the repair. There was one rainy afternoon when it was just me and Diana at home. Dad was away on a business trip as usual. The house, already quiet, now felt even slower, like every sound was being stretched out by the steady rhythm of rain tapping on the porch roof. I was sitting in the living room reading when she walked in, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. I looked up. She didn't say anything, just gently placed 1 cup on the table in front of me and sat down in the chair across from mine. No invitation, no pressure, just a warm, nearby presence. We sat in silence for a long time, but it wasn't a heavy silence. Each of us was wrapped in our own thoughts, yet fully aware of the other's presence. Some connections don't need words. They exist in glances, in breathing, in the way two people quietly acknowledge each other's being. I looked at her. I don't know why, but in that moment, I felt the need to remember this image. The woman sitting across from me, hands wrapped around a cup of cocoa, her gaze drifting toward the rain outside the window. There was a loneliness in her eyes, but also something unshakably steady, a kind of beauty that didn't demand attention, didn't try too hard, just existed. I blurted out, "Are you happy?" Diana turned to me, her eyes widening slightly, surprised by the question, but she didn't avoid it. "Sometimes," she said softly. "Sometimes not. It's like the rain, not always pleasant, but you learn to live with it." I nodded, feeling a strange emptiness in my chest. "What about you?" she asked, her voice gentle. I gave a small laugh. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a piece of furniture in this house. Not really needed, but if I were gone, the room might feel a little emptier." Because she didn't say anything for a while. She just looked at me. Then she reached out and touched my hand just for a second, as if to say, even if you don't say it, I understand. That light touch threw me off more than 100 comforting words ever could. I pulled my hand back, not because I was uncomfortable, but because I was afraid I might hold on longer than I should. It caught me off guard, especially from someone I hadn't expected to feel close to. After that day, the way we looked at each other changed. Neither of us said anything, but every time our eyes met, it felt like something inside me was being seen. It was a quiet stirring, but strong enough to make my heart shift. I started to fear those moments because I didn't know where I would end up if I kept letting my feelings drift unguarded. But I couldn't avoid them either. How do you avoid someone who makes you feel seen when the whole world has made you feel invisible? I don't know what I'm hoping for. But I do know one thing. I'm no longer the boy who walks past the dinner table with his head down. I'm a man now. And for the first time, I want to hold on to a look like it's something truly alive. I started to realize some things don't need to be spoken aloud because the silence between them is already enough to make people lose their way. In the days that followed that rainy afternoon, it felt like Deanna and I had slipped into an entirely different rhythm of living. Not through any bold actions or sudden changes, but through a kind of breathless subtlety in every small interaction. When she passed by me in the kitchen, I could feel the warmth trailing from her sleeve as it brushed my arm. When I sat reading in the living room, I knew she was looking at me from behind. And when I turned, her eyes didn't look away. It was the look of someone who finally saw me as a person, not just a quiet kid, as if she was just as surprised by her own emotions as I was. One Friday evening, Dad still hadn't come home. Diana said she'd make pumpkin soup, my favorite. I didn't say I remembered, I just smiled. We cooked together. The little kitchen felt unusually cramped. Every time I reached for the seasoning, our shoulders brushed. Every time we both bent down to grab a spoon, our eyes accidentally met, then darted away. Not from embarrassment, but from fear that something might break if we held the moment just a second too long. After dinner, she started cleaning up while I stayed to wipe down the table. When she returned, I was standing by the window, looking out at the garden, now swallowed by darkness. I don't know why I asked, but the words left my mouth before I could stop them. Are you happy? Diona was quiet for a long time. She stood behind me, not answering right away. Then she stepped closer, standing beside me, eyes also facing the night. Sometimes, happiness isn't where we're standing, but where we walk past without noticing. I turned to look at her. In that moment, everything felt still, like the world had paused to make space for this one fragile instant between two people. I didn't try to touch her, I just looked, deeply, as if it were my only chance to really see her. I know, she said softly, her voice low. You're growing up, and you're feeling things that maybe even you can't explain yet. I nodded, but I know one thing, you carry so much with such grace, it's hard not to notice. She looked at me then like she wanted to hold me and push me away at the same time. Let's not talk about what we both already know. Some feelings are best left unspoken. For everyone's sake, when left unspoken, still have a chance of saving what's left. But her eyes, the ones turning glassy without shedding a tear, told a different story. Neither of us wanted to stop. I took a step forward, just one, close enough to hear her breathing. I haven't done anything wrong, I whispered. And I don't want to, but I also don't want to turn away from what's honest. Didi closed her eyes. A single tear slipped from her long lashes. But then she stepped back. Exactly. Because you haven't done anything wrong. Hold on to that. Don't let it become something you'll regret. I stood still as she turned away. There was no hug, no kiss, but something inside me collapsed. Not the feeling, but the wall she had tried so hard to build to keep everything safe. And that turning away wasn't rejection. It was acceptance. Acceptance that between what's right and what's real, sometimes silence is the most noble choice we have. After that night, everything in the house seemed to slow down, like a song reaching its final notes. Yet the listener couldn't quite bring themselves to turn it off. Diana didn't avoid me, but she no longer moved closer either. Every word she spoke, every movement she made became more measured, so precise that I could feel the effort behind her restraint. No more lingering glances, no more gentle brushes of her hand when passing a bowl of soup, no more evenings sitting on the porch steps watching the sunset together. But what hurt me most wasn't the growing distance, it was the look in her eyes whenever she accidentally met mine, a look full of sorrow, like she was silently apologizing for something that had no name. I understood. We both did. Diana was teaching me a lesson, not with words, but with silence, that even when feelings are real, they aren't always meant to be pursued, that some boundaries exist not to punish, but to protect. And growing up sometimes means learning how to stop, not because you want to, but because you know it's right. I started spending more time outside the house. I joined study groups, picked up a workout routine, applied for a part-time job at a cafe near campus. I thought maybe if I stayed busy enough, my heart would forget those quiet, sweet moments. But every time I came home and saw Diana sitting silently in the living room, something in my chest tightened. I don't regret learning what care can feel like, even if it came in a way I didn't expect. I only regret that something so beautiful wasn't allowed to grow. One night I came home late after work. She was still awake, sitting at the dining table, the warm light casting a soft glow on her tired face. I walked over, poured myself a glass of water, and was about to leave when her voice broke the silence. So softly, I almost missed it. Noah, thank you for knowing when to stop. I froze. She didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed on the cold cup of tea in front of her. Not everyone has the courage to step back when their heart keeps urging them to move forward, she continued, but you did. And that's why I believe you'll become a good man. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and quietly left the kitchen. That night, I didn't sleep, but not because of pain. It was because for the first time in my life, I understood sometimes love means knowing where to draw the line. And growing up means learning how to accept that, even when your heart still longs to hold on. Summer ended as quietly as it began. No fireworks, no clear goodbyes, just an ordinary morning. I woke up earlier than usual, packed a few things into my backpack, and left a small note on the dining table. I'm gone. Thank you for everything. No tears, no hugs, just a long silence inside me like a wound that had healed but left a scar. I didn't leave the city. I just left the space that constantly made me second guess the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Life moved on, one step at a time. I started a new semester, busy with classes, work, and small social gatherings. I laughed, I lived, even better than I thought I would. But every now and then, on a random rainy afternoon, I'd feel something inside me pause when the scent of floral tea drifted by, or when I saw a woman with a simple jade hairpin, elegant in the way she always used to be. Diana became a quiet memory of being truly understood when I needed it most. She became a gentle memory, someone who had truly seen me right at the moment I felt invisible. And that, no matter how many layers of memory time may pool over it, I know I will never forget. One early autumn evening, I got a text from an unknown number. If one day you feel like coming by for tea, the door is still open. Baby reply, but I saved the number, not to call, but to know that somewhere in the world, there's a door. One I may never walk through again, but one that will always remind me I was loved at the right moment, even if not in the right way. I grew up through the very boundaries I chose not to cross. And Deanna, she taught me that without a single lecture. Years later, when someone asked if I'd ever been in love, I smiled and said yes, but it was the kind of love you don't hold on to, you just cherish. People often think growing up is about being strong, being decisive, but to me, growing up is knowing when to let go. Not because you've stopped loving, but because you know if you continue, you'll ruin the purest thing you've ever had. And it's precisely because I knew when to stop that I've been able to keep moving forward with a heart free of resentment, free of regret, filled only with gratitude for having once been truly seen, even if only for a fleeting moment in the long stretch of a life. Some stories don't need to end with a hug or a kiss to be profound. Some relationships are never named, yet they still change a person forever. Noah's journey wasn't about forbidden love. It was about rediscovering his own worth through a glance, a moment of being seen, and a brief experience of tenderness he had long been missing. We don't get to choose who sees us in our most vulnerable moments, but we do get to choose what's right when our feelings cross the boundaries of what's familiar. Sometimes growing up isn't about holding on, it's about letting go at the right time in the right way. Have you ever experienced a connection so deep that you couldn't keep it but could never forget it? Someone you'll always remember? Not because of love, but because they once touched the most honest part of who you are? Share your story in the comments below, because maybe, just maybe, your words will help someone out there feel a little less alone in emotions they thought no one could ever understand.